I'm not here to tell anybody what they should do with their money. If you make your money, you do what you want with it.
When I was in college, I studied psychology and computer science. And, one of the things that you learn when you study psychology is that there are all these parts of the brain which are geared just towards understanding people.
One of the world's wealthiest men gave away $8 billion and kept only $2 million for himself. He lived in rented apartments and carried his documents in plastic bags until he died. Another billionaire worth $70 billion drives a $30,000 car and wears the same gray t-shirt every day. A telecom giant forces his executives to share hotel rooms and brings sandwiches to board meetings. These aren't publicity stunts. Something happened in their past that made them terrified of spending money. The truth behind their extreme frugality is disturbing. Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett could have picked any mansion in the world, any coast, any skyline, any view. But he didn't. In 1958, with millions already on the horizon, he bought a 5-bedroom house in Omaha for $31,500. That was when he was 28. In 2025, at 95 years old, he still lives there. The house is now worth around $1 million, but that's barely a drop compared to his $146 billion fortune. He never left, never traded up, never added a mansion in the mountains or a penthouse in Manhattan. When people asked why, he didn't hesitate. He said he had everything he needed right there. He told shareholders once that more houses would only make things worse, not better. 6 or 8 homes, he said, would just add noise to a life that's already good. He didn't say it to impress anyone. He just meant it. He wasn't looking for luxury. He was looking for peace. And somehow, that old Nebraska house gave it to him. His car told the same story. For years, he drove an old Cadillac until it got so worn, his daughter finally said it was embarrassing. Only then did he upgrade, and not to a Ferrari or a Bentley, just another Cadillac, with a plate that said thrifty. And he meant that too. He didn't say it to look clever. It was who he was. He never owned a smartphone, carried a flip phone for years, didn't keep a computer on his office desk either. This was the same desk at Berkshire Hathaway, where he made billion-dollar decisions without needing 3 screens or stock tickers buzzing. When Bill Gates flew into Omaha, Buffett didn't send a limo. He got in his own car and drove to the airport himself. No chauffeur, no bodyguard, just him behind the wheel. Even his mornings felt like they came out of a different era. Every day, he stopped by McDonald's on his 5-minute commute. He always chose between 3 breakfast meals. The cheapest was $2.61. The others were $2.95 and $3.17. And every morning, he looked at the market. If it was a good day, he'd go for the $3.17. If stocks were down, he dropped back to $2.61 or $2.95. That wasn't a joke. He said it in the HBO documentary Becoming Warren Buffett, sitting in his car with exact change laid out in the cup holder. Billionaire or not, he stuck to his breakfast budget. His meals never looked like the menus of the rich. He drank 5 cans of Coca-Cola a day, 8 Cheetos and potato chips. Said he liked what he liked, and that was enough. He didn't care for fancy restaurants or $100 meals. He preferred what made him happy. Jeff Bezos, he was already a billionaire, but he still drove that old gray 1996 Honda Accord through Seattle traffic like it was the most normal thing in the world. In 1999, when Bob Simon from 60 Minutes asked him about that car, Bezos just laughed and said it was a perfectly good car. He wasn't joking. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He genuinely believed it. And even back then, when his net worth was soaring past $10 billion, he didn't feel the need to swap it for a Bentley or a Ferrari. He stuck with the Honda. That wasn't just some billionaire quirk. It was a reflection of how he lived and how he built Amazon. When the company was still a scrappy startup, Jeff was doing the heavy lifting himself, literally. He used to load boxes into a 1987 Chevrolet Blazer and drive them to the post office. The SUV was old, the paint was dull, and the rear door squeaked every time he slammed it shut. He didn't care. There was no staff to do it for him, no PR cameras watching, just long hours and manual labor. He wasn't wearing a tailored suit either. Most days it was a tucked-in polo, worn jeans, and sneakers that looked like they'd seen better days. Inside the Amazon offices, things didn't look much better. Desks were made from wooden doors thrown across metal frames. No ergonomic chairs, no designer lights, no plush carpets. Just the cheapest setup that worked. And it wasn't just for the employees. Bezos sat at one, too. It became a symbol. Those door desks. Frugality wasn't just a corporate value. It was personal. Even as Amazon grew, the habits didn't change. Bezos didn't show up to board meetings in a chauffeured limo. He flew commercial. He sat in coach. He didn't care about status symbols. The money was there. But he had other plans for it. Almost everything went back into Amazon. Salaries were modest. Bonuses were tight. Office snacks were cheap. He once turned down spending extra on a coffee machine because the basic one was still working. In 2003, the company was expanding rapidly, but Bezos still didn't own a yacht. He still didn't buy a mansion with golden faucets or marble statues. Instead, he focused on infrastructure, warehouses, customer service systems, and software. His vision was bigger than his personal comfort. And that was the thing. He saw luxury as a distraction. While other dot-com CEOs were renting private islands and throwing lavish launch parties, he was sleeping 6 hours a night and obsessing over page load speeds. People around him noticed. Some mocked it, others admired it, but nobody could deny that it worked. The same man who delivered his own packages was now building a company that would one day deliver to half the world. By 2013, he was the 19th richest person in the world. Still no sports car. Still no designer watch. Still driving himself around in a car that could barely pass as modern. Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg could buy an island, a fleet of yachts, or 10 castles in Europe if he wanted. But for years, he just wore the same plain gray t-shirt, the same hoodie, the same jeans. Not because he had to, because he wanted to make fewer choices. He once said he didn't want to waste his brain deciding what to wear each morning. He wanted to save that energy for building Facebook. So while the world stared at screens chasing status and designer labels, the guy who built the screens was keeping it simple. His hoodie became part of Silicon Valley's culture, not because it was stylish, but because he didn't care if it was. When it came to cars, he stayed in the same lane. Not fast, not flashy, just functional. At a time when his net worth had already crossed $70 billion, he was still driving around in an Acura TSX, a $30,000 sedan. Later, in 2014, he bought something newer, a Volkswagen Golf GTI, again, about $30,000. Black, manual transmission. He'd park it outside Facebook's Menlo Park headquarters like he was just another engineer clocking in. It wasn't a Bugatti. It wasn't a Tesla Roadster. It was a hatchback with cup holders and cloth seats. Someone did the math once. He could have spent $1.3 million on a supercar. He didn't. The gap between what he could drive and what he chose to drive was $1.3 million. He didn't flinch. Even the watch on his wrist followed the same quiet code. For years, it was just a digital one. Not a Rolex, not a custom timepiece with diamonds, just a $30 strap of plastic and pixels that told him what time it was. That's all it needed to do. No message, no statement, just time. His home followed that same rhythm. He didn't buy a mountain or a mansion with 40 bathrooms. In 2011, when he was just 26 years old and already a billionaire many times over, he bought a house in Palo Alto. Price tag, $7 million? Now that's a lot by everyday standards, but for someone who could buy an entire block with pocket change, it was modest. It had a lawn, some trees, a driveway. And in 2012, he got married there, in the backyard. No fireworks, no designer gown parade. Just a quiet ceremony, a few guests, and a post-wedding meal that most people eat in their car. They went to McDonald's. That's how he celebrated his wedding. No castle, no private chef. Just fries and fast food after vows. That wasn't a mistake. That was a message. He never seemed interested in luxury for the sake of it. He didn't need golden plates or velvet ropes. He already had everything and still chose simplicity. Carlos Slim was once the richest man in the world, holding a net worth close to $70 billion during the 2010s. But if you saw him on the street or looked at the way he lives, you might not believe it. In Mexico City, where wealth often translates into private compounds and armed security, Slim has lived in the same 6-bedroom house for more than 40 years. It's not small, but it's far from a palace. No marble fountains, no golden gates, just a quiet home in the Lomas de Chapultepec district where he raised his 6 children. And to this day, it's where they all still gather for weekly dinners, often with home-cooked food served at a simple family table. His lifestyle has always followed the same rule he expects from his businesses. Even when times are good, act like the cow is still skinny. That's the phrase he puts in his employee manuals. It means don't waste, don't overexpand, don't spend just because you can. He's flown commercial for most of his life. He drives an old Mercedes-Benz, and he usually shows up to meetings without security or fanfare. It's not about putting on a show for the media. He's been doing this for decades. Some of his former colleagues say they've seen him walk into meetings alone, carrying his own notes, waiting in the lobby just like anyone else. Slim doesn't think wealth is for flashing. He said that wealth is like an orchard. You're supposed to grow it, prune it, and make it produce more fruit. That fruit isn't for eating in one sitting. It's for planting more trees. And that's exactly how he's treated his fortune. He's reinvested most of it into businesses that build infrastructure, expand networks, and create jobs. Telecom, banking, construction, mining, real estate. His empire stretches across Latin America, but he rarely talks about it with ego. To him, the money isn't the goal. The build is. He does allow himself small luxuries, but even those come with purpose. He has a large art collection, but instead of hiding it away, he built the Sumaya Museum in Mexico City to share it with the public. He named it after his late wife, Sumaya Domit, who passed away in 1999. Entry to the museum is free. It's one of the most visited art spaces in Latin America. It houses more than 66,000 works, including pieces from Rodin, Van Gogh, and Da Vinci. He once bought a mansion in New York for $80 million, but he didn't move in. He later sold it. It was likely just another smart investment. Charlie Ergen. Charlie Ergen didn't care about velvet chairs or gold-plated pens. He had billions in the bank, but that never changed how he lived. His mother had raised him on Depression-era values, and those values stuck. He didn't believe in showy offices or catered meetings. His desk? It wasn't mahogany or even expensive. It was just a plain table. That was enough. Every day, without fail, he packed his own lunch. A sandwich and a bottle of Gatorade. That brown bag was as consistent as sunrise. He never liked wasting time or money on restaurants, even during business trips. Other executives went out for steak and wine. Charlie pulled out leftovers, and he didn't do it once or twice. It became a ritual, a rhythm. It was so constant. Employees started joking about it like company folklore. Even when Dish Network began growing into a telecom giant, Charlie refused to let spending grow with it. He laid down rules. They had to share. Yes, even senior leaders. People who'd never split a hotel room since college suddenly found themselves bunking with co-workers. Some of them were even paired with Charlie himself. Imagine being worth over $10 billion and telling your team, "We'll save a few hundred if you share a room." And he meant it. He didn't just talk frugal. He lived it. The man drove old cars that had no glamour. Nothing flashy. Nothing fast. Just cars that worked. Ones that had a few years and scratches on them. When others chased Ferraris and private jets, Charlie stuck to coach class. Short flight? Coach. Always. He clipped coupons. He reused coffee filters. He didn't joke about these things. He lived by them. He treated every dollar like it mattered, like it could vanish. And when you listened closely, you'd hear why. His mom had seen money vanish before. Charlie never wanted to forget what that looked like. His view of money shaped everything around him. He didn't believe in acting rich just because he was. He didn't buy yachts, didn't own sports teams, didn't build mansions with marble bathrooms and infinity pools. That stuff never moved him. He believed in using money, not flaunting it. And because he practiced it so strictly, Dish Network started to reflect it too. The company culture took on his shape. People started paying attention to how they spent. Even critics who found his methods extreme had to admit one thing. He didn't ask anyone to do something he wasn't already doing himself. Amancio Ortega. In the gray streets of La Coruña, there's a man who walks with no bodyguards, no media glare, and no sign of the billions he commands. His name is Amancio Ortega. To some, he's just another elderly man in a blue blazer, a white shirt, and gray trousers. But behind that quiet presence is the mind that built Zara into one of the largest fashion empires in the world. At one point, Ortega's net worth hovered between $70 and $80 billion, making him one of the 3 richest people on the planet. Yet if you followed him for a day, you might think he was a retired shopkeeper rather than the founder of Inditex. He never liked attention. Even during Zara's rise across Europe and then the world, Ortega stayed hidden from cameras. For decades, there wasn't a single official photo of him in the press. He avoided speeches, red carpets, or the flashy fashion shows that many of his rivals considered routine. While others built brands around their names and faces, Ortega stayed in the background, focusing only on building the company. When his name finally surfaced on the world's richest lists, people in Spain were more shocked by how little they knew about him than how much money he had. Ortega still lives in Galicia. He could have chosen New York or Paris or a glass mansion in the hills of Madrid, but he stayed home. Not in a palace or sprawling villa either. Just a modest apartment in downtown La Coruña. Some mornings, locals spot him quietly sipping coffee at the same cafe he's visited for years. His lifestyle stayed the same, even as Zara expanded into over 200 markets with thousands of stores. And when he goes to the company's global headquarters, he doesn't have a penthouse office or a separate entrance. He doesn't even use a private elevator. And when it's lunchtime, he walks straight to the cafeteria. His wardrobe mirrors his beliefs. There's no Italian tailoring or custom-made luxury. He wears the same kind of clothes sold in Zara stores, often off the rack. That navy blazer, white shirt, and gray pants. It's almost a uniform. People close to him say he doesn't even think about clothes much, which is ironic for someone who built a fashion giant. He looks like someone who might be there to fix your printer, not someone whose brand reshaped the way people buy clothes. Even though he owns a Bombardier private jet, it's not for vacation or leisure. It's purely functional, just a way to get from one business meeting to another when necessary. He rarely takes holidays. People say he's so focused on work that he doesn't know what to do with free time. The few times he steps away, he prefers rural Spain. That's what joy looks like to him. Elon Musk. Elon Musk had more money than almost anyone else alive, but he didn't live like it. By 2022, he was floating between $200 and $250 billion in net worth depending on the day, often swapping spots with Jeff Bezos on the Bloomberg Billionares Index. But if you looked at where he slept, it wasn't a mansion. It wasn't even a hotel. It was a friend's guest room, sometimes a couch. In one 2022 interview, he calmly admitted, "I don't even own a place right now. I'm literally staying at friends' places." It wasn't a joke. He had already tweeted back in 2020 that he would own no house, and within months, sold off all 7 of his California mansions. These weren't average homes. He sold one for $29 million in Hillsborough, another for $7 million in Bel Air. By the end of that sell-off, his real estate footprint had disappeared. What replaced it was a 375-square-foot box, a prefab fold-out house worth around $50,000 near SpaceX's Texas launch site. His daily routine made that choice clearer. He was barely ever home. He wasn't even trying to rest. In 2018, when Tesla hit crisis mode trying to deliver the Model 3, Musk started sleeping on a couch at the Fremont factory. Later, he admitted the couch was so bad, he started sleeping on the floor instead. He said he didn't want to be in a more comfortable situation than the people on the line. That year, he worked 120 hours a week, barely eating, pushing himself to the edge. When Tesla opened a new gigafactory in Germany in 2022, a photo leaked of Musk passed out under a desk, wrapped in a jacket like a blanket, his laptop open beside him. That wasn't a one-off. For him, that was how things worked. He had told reporters many times that he hadn't taken a vacation in years. When he did take time off in 2000, it ended with him being ousted from PayPal while lying in bed with malaria. After that, he never truly disconnected again. He didn't dress like a billionaire. He didn't eat like one. And aside from his private jet, which he uses like a flying office, he rarely showed any signs of traditional luxury. "It's not as though my personal consumption is high," he said at a TED conference. "The one exception is the plane. But if I don't use the plane, then I have fewer hours to work." That plane is a Gulfstream G650ER, capable of traveling nearly 8,000 miles without refueling. But even that was framed as a tool. He needed to bounce between Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company. The jet saved him time. Nothing else he owned was there for show. Even Grimes, his partner at the time, was shocked. She told Vanity Fair that Elon sometimes lived below the poverty line. She said, "Bro does not live like a billionaire. Bro sometimes lives in a $40,000 house." She mentioned a hole in their mattress that he didn't want to replace. It wasn't about saving money. It was about ignoring comfort entirely. If it didn't help his work, he didn't care. He wasn't buying things. He wasn't collecting cars. He wasn't hoarding art or wine or rare watches. When he needed a place in the Bay Area, he'd text Google co-founder Larry Page and say, "I don't know where to stay tonight. Can I come over?" And Page would say, "Yes." This wasn't when Musk was broke. This was when he was the richest man on Earth. Chuck Feeney. Chuck Feeney had billions but chose to live like he barely had thousands. He didn't talk about it. He didn't flaunt it. He just started giving it all away. At his peak, he was worth around $8 billion, built from his co-founding of duty-free shoppers in the 1980s. But by 2020, his personal bank account held about $2 million. That was all he kept for himself. Not by accident. That was the plan. He passed away in October 2023 at 92, but long before that, he had already reached his personal goal. He wanted to give away 99% of his fortune while still alive. And he did. It wasn't just the size of the donations that shocked people. It was the way he gave, quietly, anonymously. Often, even the people receiving the money didn't know where it came from. He didn't move through the world like someone rich. Most people who met him never guessed he had serious money. He wore simple clothes. He carried documents in a plastic bag instead of a briefcase. He wore a $10 Casio watch and made jokes about it. Once, when a writer admired the watch, Chuck just took it off and gave it to him. He had no interest in fancy labels or making impressions. He never bought a mansion. He never bought an estate. He didn't collect cars. He didn't even own one in his later years. He lived in rented apartments, walked or took buses, flew in economy class even on long flights into his mid-80s. Eventually, friends had to persuade him to stop flying coach because of his health. When others built billion-dollar charities with their names carved into marble walls, Chuck built his behind the curtain. Buildings popped up across college campuses, funded by anonymous donations. Entire wings in universities existed because of him, but his name stayed off the plaque. Sometimes, he had to convince people to accept the money without revealing him as the donor. At Cornell University, his gifts quietly helped shape the campus, brick by brick. He wasn't shy about explaining why he lived this way. He said the luxuries that came with money just didn't mean anything to him. Boats, watches, the extra attention, none of it moved him. And it had always been that way. Even in his earlier career, when money started pouring in, he felt uncomfortable with it. He saw wealth not as a prize, but as a responsibility. And he handled that responsibility like a mission. He closed his foundation in 2020 after completing what he called his Giving While Living project. The foundation had funneled around $8 billion into education, public health, scientific research, human rights, and peace-building efforts. Not $1 came with bragging rights. His life confused a lot of people. Former business partners were stunned when they'd meet him. One remembered sitting down for dinner in the 1980s and being shocked when Chuck walked in wearing a faded Aloha shirt, white pants, and shoes with no socks. This was a man worth hundreds of millions at the time. But he didn't look like it. He didn't want to. Even Warren Buffett called him the role model for every billionaire. Buffett admired Chuck's belief that wealth should be used, not hoarded, and definitely not worshipped. Bill Gates, too, acknowledged Chuck's legacy when shaping the Gates Foundation. Chuck proved it was possible to live simply, even with billions at your fingertips, and to let go of almost all of it without fear.